2. The Shmospel of Sebastian. Part 1. From Arambol to Pune. I am Sebastian Ritter, and this is my Shmospel. I was born in 1980, in a small town in Bavaria. My parents had me in their late teens and split up when I was still a baby. In general, they were more into taking drugs and gambling than they were into parenting. Early on, I understood that if I wanted something, I needed to earn it. For this, I am grateful, because as an adult, self-sufficiency has become something of an art form for me. My granddad is the one who saved me from turning out like my parents. He was a man of wisdom who lived close to nature. He was also big on independence and in taking responsibility. As a small child, he gave me a hammer, a box of nails, and some wood. He showed me how to use them and told me I could build a treehouse for myself in his garden, but if I fell from the tree, he would give me a slap. I never fell. And while I can understand how he wasn't so good for my mum, for me, he was my guiding light. It is he who taught me how to fix things, how to take pride in my work, and what is the meaning of integrity. When I was 17, my mum got a new boyfriend. He was wealthy but abusive. One day, he attacked me physically, and I defended myself. He went to the police and said that I had attacked him. My mum backed his story because she was frightened of him. It was a dreadful betrayal, and I could not believe that she would do such a thing. When the police came for me, I had a little weed in my pocket, and it was a big mess. But in the end, they believed my story, because my mother's boyfriend had a long history of violence. And so I moved out of my mother's house and found a squat, and I used my carpentry skills to do it up. It was a time of freedom, though I was filled with so much rage and self-hatred that I even tried to kill myself. I was given a therapist by the state who was excellent. She helped me to see that beyond my traumas, I am by nature a joyous person, and I love many things like music and dancing, woodwork, brewing beer, and shamanism. After college, I joined the UN and became a first responder to large disasters. This helped me escape the town I grew up in and took me around the world. I was sent to some pretty serious war zones, but I managed to keep my head together. Gradually, I climbed the ranks of the organization and became a disaster response manager. Not surprisingly, the intensity of the work took its toll, and I began to feel myself becoming burned out. So in 2005, I decided to take a long break and went to India. At first, I volunteered with an NGO, building a school for orphan children in Gujarat. The village was isolated. It did not have electricity or running water, but the children were exuberant and shone with a divine spark of life. When the building of the school was complete, I stayed on in the village a while longer and then took a train down to Goa. It was there in Arambol that I first met David, who became Shmeiki Baba. He was a funny guy, but he also seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. Although we are from such different backgrounds, we both resonated in our quests, and when Shmeiki Baba talked about walking across India without wearing shoes or taking money, others thought he was crazy, but I immediately wanted to go with him. Sure enough, I'd had a pleasant time in Goa, but there was something I found empty and frivolous about it, and I wanted to do something more challenging and real. So when he agreed for me to go with him, I was delighted. And like this, we set off on foot into the unknown, an Aryan and a Jew, without the safety net of credit cards or Gore-Tex hiking boots. We must have looked quite a pair. Me with my long blonde dreadlocks, he with his Semitic features, and I'm a lot taller than him. He's not much more than 170 centimeters, and I'm almost 2 meters. While Shmeiki Baba has a big heart, I know that he won't mind me saying this, but at times he could be quite a spoilt brat. It was obvious that he had always had stuff done for him, and he kind of expected things to continue this way. unlike me, he had never before experienced hunger. Thursday, February the 9th, 2006. It was at first light when I reached Sri Ganesh Cafe next to the 90-degree bend on Arambol Main Road, just as Shmeiki Baba arrived from the other direction, wearing a checked hat and holding the knobbly walking stick that he'd found on the beach. Over his shoulder was slung a red rucksack. We greeted each other warmly. The night before, I had told Mohan, the owner of Sri Ganesh Cafe, about our planned journey when I passed him in the street. He was so enthusiastic about it that he promised he would get up to see us off, and he proved good to his word, as when he heard our voices outside his cafe, he made his way outside, still half asleep. Mohan offered us a seat and set about making us each a cup of chai and an omelette sandwich. This was the first act of benevolence towards us as pilgrims. "What you take with you?" asked Mohan, motioning towards Shmeiki Baba's rucksack. He opened it up and pointed to the various things inside. "I've got my toothbrush and toothpaste, a bottle of Dettol disinfectant, a packet of cotton buds, some hemorrhoid cream, some plasters, tweezers, 3 shirts, 2 pants, a towel, a blanket, 3 water bottles, my passport, a map of Maharashtra, a pot, a plate, a knife, a spoon, a torch, and my bansuri." My belongings were in my burlap shoulder bag, and my Gibson guitar was in a thin canvas bag. "And what's that?" asked Shmeiki Baba, pointing to the tiny decorative bottle which was hanging on a string around my neck. "Ah, that," I said, "is some tears of the wee baby Jesus." "I've never tried Jesus's tears," said Shmeiki Baba. "All in good time," I said. "You don't have a tent?" asked Mohan. "No," we said. "What happens when raining?" asked Mohan. "We'll get wet," said Shmeiki Baba. "Not good," said Mohan, looking at us as though we were mad. He went out to the back of his restaurant, from where we heard long ripping sounds. He returned a minute later with 2 large plastic sheets and gave one to Shmeiki Baba and one to me. We thanked him, folded them up, and managed to fit them under the flaps of our bags. "And you have a hat," said Mohan to Shmeiki Baba, "but Sebastian, you do not." "I can't wear a hat, Mohan. Look at my dreads," I said. "That's no good. I have an idea," said Mohan, and he went again to the back of the restaurant and returned with a dusty, wide-brimmed straw hat. He banged out the dust and then with a sharp pair of scissors cut out the middle of the hat. "Try this," he said, and I did as he suggested, managing to pull the brim over my dreadlocks. "It works, thank you, you're a genius," I said to Mohan, who beamed. "Fitting your journey begins here," said Mohan, pointing to the large picture of Ganesha which hung on the wall. "Ganesha is lord of planets and remover of obstacles. See his big belly, full and round. He is satisfied. He wants for nothing. See also his trunk. It goes right because he chooses right thing. See also he has one tusk, other is broken off. This means one principle, oneself. In his left hand, sweet fruit. This is the result of knowledge, pure bliss. And do not forget, next to him is Mushika mouse, symbol of desire. But Mushika is also vehicle of Ganesha, because Ganesha is master of desire. May you both become masters of your desire as you go on Padayatra, foot pilgrimage." "Thank you," we said. "You know," said Mohan, "you may choose a god to worship during your walk and he will protect you." "Has to be Ganesha," I said. "I guess me too," said Shmeiki Baba. "Good, good," said Mohan. And Shmeiki Baba got out his map of the state of Maharashtra and we discussed our route. We agreed we would begin by walking up the west side of the Western Ghats mountain range, and somewhere around Kosumb we would cross to the eastern side of the mountains, which we would follow until we reached the Deccan Plateau. From there, it would be pretty much a straight line to Pune. "Remember, If you sleep under palm trees, be careful coconut does not fall on head, said Mohan. How can I be careful if I'm asleep, said Shmeiki Baba. Answer lie in question, said Mohan. We finished our chai and ate our sandwiches. Finally, it was time to embrace Mohan with full blessings and to take the first steps of our great walk. As we set off, the birdsong was plentiful, the early morning air was fresh, and the palm trees swayed slightly in the breeze. Your stride is slightly shorter when you're barefoot, but your step is more alive, always checking, especially on uneven surfaces. Luckily, we had both already been doing a lot of barefoot walking, and the soles of our feet were quite tough. Like this, we left Arambol, past the shuttered shops and the guest houses, where most of the tourists were still asleep, past St. Carmel's Church on the left and the main bus stand. There, we had to hold our breath and run through a thick cloud of acrid smoke caused by someone burning their plastic rubbish. Nothing like a plastic puja to start the day, said Shmeiki Baba. I guess this kind of thing wouldn't happen in a real universe. I asked him what he meant by this, and he said, we humans tend to get things out of balance because our universe is a simulation. I asked him to explain. Remember at the banyan tree I talked about Sheila, the cosmic entity I've been channeling? Well, she told me that our universe is artificial. How's that? I asked. She said the Great Mother gave birth to the universes which comprise the multiverse, and in some of them, beings have become so advanced that they're able to generate entire artificial universes of their own. Our universe is one of these. We exist inside a computer that belongs to a species called the Shagasomin, which originates on a moon called Grechna, which orbits the planet Chibla around the star Kehalamenda in the galaxy Stachenzeugen in the universe Ansoff 1. Apparently, our universe is the graduation project of a student called Quay. And what shape is our universe? I asked. And Shmeiki Baba replied, in one sense it has no shape, and in another sense you might think of it as torus-shaped. What's a torus? I asked. Like a donut, he said. I chewed on this for a while, and Shmeiki Baba continued to explain what Sheila had told him. When intelligent species in artificial universes begin to use technology to control nature, they tend to lose their humility, become greedy, and separate themselves from the source. And while the Great Mother can intervene when things go wrong in natural universes, she can't directly intervene in ours because it was not born from her. In this sense, I guess she's more like our grandmother than our mother. Anyway, the Great Mother did the best she could, and she approached the maker of our universe and asked him to send us assistance. This is why Quay sent Sheila to us to help us get back on track. Unfortunately, due to some sort of cosmic data compatibility issue, so far only I can hear her. What help is Sheila offering? I asked. Shmeiki, said Shmeiki Baba. I still don't quite get what this Shmeiki is, I said. Well, said Shmeiki Baba, there are many existing paths to self-realization, and around them are formed organizations which to varying degrees are corrupt, and this limits their effectiveness. This is where Shmeiki comes in. By remembering to be humorous and childlike, it is possible to get the good out of existing spirituality without getting stuck in all the shit. Sounds pragmatic, I said. Exactly, said Shmeiki Baba. Wasn't Osho's fixer also called Sheila? I asked. I think so, as was my mum's cleaning lady, said Shmeiki Baba. Have you heard of Sheila Nagigs? I asked. No, who's she? Asked Shmeiki Baba. Not she, but they, I said. So who are they? Asked Shmeiki Baba. They are medieval carvings of women with exaggerated vaginas, found on churches around Europe, I said. Really? Asked Shmeiki Baba. Yes, I said. They were meant to ward off evil spirits. How appropriate, said Shmeiki Baba. We walked on in silence for about 4 kilometers until we reached the village of Paliem. Our legs were already red with dust, as the earth in this part of Goa contains so much iron ore. We took a rest on a concrete wall, and while we drank some water, we watched a middle-aged Australian woman called Randy get off her scooter some meters ahead. She walked over to a bitch who was lying at the side of the road with a nasty wound on her head. Randy took the bitch in her arms and hugged her. "Sometimes dogs are easier to love than humans," said Shmeiki Baba. We blessed them both and continued on our way. The road was already hot under our feet, but still bearable. I said that if we had left any later in the season, the roads would have been too hot to walk on barefoot during the day. Shmeiki Baba said, "By the time the sun becomes too hot, may the soles of our feet be thicker, and may the roads we walk along be shaded with trees." "Amen," I said. It was about noon by the time we reached the river Terrakol, which forms the boundary between North Goa and the Sindhudurg district of Maharashtra state. The river rises in the western Ghats and flows southwest until it meets the Arabian Sea. We sat on the south bank of the river and waited for the ferry. Back in 2006, the Aronda-Kiranpani bridge had not even started to be built, and there were many local men waiting for the ferry. Some crouched, held hands, and playfully tried to pull each other over. I enjoyed their sense of brotherhood and how they managed to remain childish. They didn't need Shmeiki. I wondered if they had family members who had emigrated to Europe and had become serious. They might need Shmeiki. Shmeiki Baba approached one of the local men and said, "Excuse me, I'm terribly sorry to bother you, but you don't happen to have the time by any chance, do you?" The man shrugged in confusion. "Oh, you're so English," I said to Shmeiki Baba, and turned to the man, pointing to my wrist. The man answered, 1:25. At 1:30, the ferry blew its horn to announce it was ready for boarding. Here we encountered our first hurdle. Although it was only 10 rupees per person to cross, we were carrying no money whatsoever. The ticket man seemed angry and unhappy, and I was not hopeful that he would allow us on board. But Shmeiki Baba approached him directly, saying, "Bhayaji, we would like to cross, but we do not have money." The ticket man just waved us through, without changing his expression. This was the second act of benevolence towards us as pilgrims, and we were delighted. As the ferry began its crossing, Shmeiki Baba got out his bansuri and began to play a raga, so sensitive and hopeful that it made my heart sing. Enthralled by his melody, some French tourists began to talk to us and invited us to eat lunch with them. When we explained that we had no money, they insisted on paying. We thanked them and remarked that when you walk out into the world with trust, the benevolence of existence is quick to cradle you. After disembarking, we chose a veg and non-veg darbar with our new friends. We ate veg and drank some beer before proceeding slightly tipsy up State Highway 123. In the heat of the afternoon, the tarmac and the sand next to it was scorchingly hot. We danced between shady spots, and at other times, when there was no shade, we just suffered. By dusk, we had walked about 25 kilometers and were completely exhausted. I watched my legs moving below me, and it was as though they belonged to someone else. "I'd love a joint to smoke," I said absent-mindedly, and as I did so, I stepped on a branch and managed to get a large thorn stuck in the sole of my left foot. I sat down to remove it with my fingers and did not manage, so Shmeiki Baba got out his tweezers and his Dettol disinfectant. He cleaned the bottom of my foot and professionally pulled out the thorn. Looking at my feet, they were already quite bashed up. "How are yours holding up?" I asked. His were somehow completely fine. "I'm doing my best to step gently to minimize the impact on my body," he said. "It's important because I've got screws holding my lower spine together." This was the first I'd heard about it, and I was surprised. He explained, "When I was a teenager, it turned out there were no pins holding my lumbar to sacral vertebrae, so they slipped apart. I was operated on but not effectively, and the condition got worse until one clever doctor managed to screw me together. I realize now that this experience was what finally broke my trust in life, and this walk, for me, is all about regaining that trust. I understood how big a wound this was for him. There's something I want to say to you, I said. What's that? He asked. Maybe your spinal condition saved you from a worse fate, I said. Yes, brother, he said. Maybe that is true. I hugged him, and we agreed we should rest. I saw that about 20 meters back from the road, there was a lone siso tree in a field. It looked like an excellent place to camp. It was a beautiful place, but now we faced our next problem. We'd had nothing to eat since lunch, and we were hungry. We looked around for fruit trees, but there were none. We simply had nothing to eat. We can always eat ants, I said, but neither of us was yet ready to cross that bridge. And so we tried not to dwell on why we hadn't at least brought with us some emergency rations, and instead we made a fire and got out our instruments. I turned on my electric tuner, which was clipped onto the headstock of my guitar. Then I paused for a moment to look around me, and as I did so, a crow landed just above us on a low-hanging branch. The bird emitted a brief call, enough for my tuner to respond. 432 Hertz, said Shmeiki Baba, reading the display, and the bird flew off. Shmeiki Baba closed his eyes and meditated. When he opened them, he said we should tune the note A to 432 Hertz rather than the standard 440 Hertz. I asked Shmeiki Baba to explain why. He closed his eyes once more and began to talk in Sheila's voice. Sheila 4. When you tune the note A to 432 Hertz, there is a perfect correlation between the vibrations of your sounds and the physical universe, as determined by the great algorithm. At this frequency, sound vibrations have powerful healing and evolutionary properties, just as they caused protons, neutrons, and electrons in your early universe to join together to form atoms, and for those atoms to group together and become nebula, which formed your stars and ultimately you. In India, this process is called Nada Brahma, which means sound is the creator. Those who built many of your ancient megaliths understood this correspondence. The Greek man Pythagoras called the number 432 the number of God. Shmeiki Baba opened his eyes. How about we give it a try, he asked. It's easy for me to change my tuning, but how will you change yours, I asked, pointing to Shmeiki Baba's flute. I think I can move the cork at the top and it will shift the tuning, he said. So I turned on my tuner and Shmeiki Baba played an A, and it fluctuated around 440 Hertz. He took a stick, slid it down the length of the flute, and used it to push the cork outwards. He played another A, and it fluctuated around 436 Hertz. I think I can push it further, he said, pushing the cork to the very edge of the flute. He played another note, and this time it was bang on 432 Hertz. My lord, do you hear how it resonates? Asked Shmeiki Baba enthusiastically. Yes, I said. There was no doubt about it, the sound was fuller. I hurried to retune my guitar accordingly, and we began to play again. Immediately, I noticed how our music had a different quality. It sounded more whole, and as we played, I felt my focus was deeper, and my chord changes were more receptive to Shmeiki Baba's melody. It was as though we were tapping into a power beyond ourselves. Tingles went up my spine, and I completely forgot about my hunger as we played our hearts out, climbing musical ladders to the beyond. When I opened my eyes, there were tears running down Shmeiki Baba's cheeks. Shmeiki Baba looked at me and said, Sheila has more to share. Okay, I said, eager to hear what she would say. If you look for it, you will find the number 432 all over the place. Multiply 432 by 432, you get 186,624, which is the approximate speed of light in miles per second. Meanwhile, 432 multiplied by 200 is 86,400, which is the number of seconds in a day, and also the diameter of the planet Jupiter in miles. 432 multiplied by 2,000 is 864,000, which is the diameter of your Sun in miles, while 432 multiplied by 5 is 2,160, which is the diameter of your Moon in miles. 432 multiplied by 10 is 4,320, and this is the diameter of the planet Mars in miles. And in case you didn't know, 432 multiplied by 60 is 25,920, and this is the number of years in the precession of the equinoxes. Are you catching my drift? I'm not sure, I said. Well, said Sheila, in Indian tradition, a yuga is 432,000 years, and one kalpa is 1,000 mahayugas, which is 4,320,000,000 years, and this is actually quite an accurate aging of planet Earth. This is all amazing, but what good does it do me? I asked. For one thing, having your mind blown makes space for new understandings, said Sheila, and it can also help you to know that there is order in the seeming chaos. So who was it who changed the note A to 440 Hertz? I asked. Joseph Goebbels, said Sheila. Oh God, I said. The decision to tune A to 440 Hertz was transported to the United States through the influence of the Catholic Church, and from there it became the international standard. And with that, Sheila finished talking, and Shmeiki Baba picked up his flute. We played once more with jubilation, and after about 10 minutes, we heard a truck stop on the road. Soon after, 2 men approached us and said hello. They smelled of alcohol, but they were friendly, and we allowed them to sit with us. They introduced themselves as Mr. Ravi Gosavi and Mr. Mahesh Kohli. Music good, said Ravi, and for a few minutes more they sat listening intently while we carried on playing. Mahesh asked if we were hungry, and when I said very hungry, he rushed to his truck and came back with a number of bulging shopping bags. Ravi took out a kerosene lantern and lit it, and then he revealed a dudi, a calabash, which is a type of light green squash. He also revealed other more typical vegetables, as well as rice, spices, and cooking utensils, including a grate for the fire. Ravi and Mahesh set about making food like professionals, and to us, these 2 half-drunk truckers were angels sent from above. We carried on playing, inspired by the sense that our need for food had been gloriously answered by surrendering to our hunger and the number 432. We make bhaji, said Mahesh. Very tasty, said Ravi. Ravi cooked turmeric, curry powder and mustard seeds in peanut oil, added chopped onion, garlic, ginger, green chilies and finely chopped dudi. The aroma was intoxicating. You know, curry powder is a British invention, said Shmeiki Baba. No, Indian, said Ravi. In the time the British ruled here, they started blending a number of spices for ease, and they called this curry powder, insisted Shmeiki Baba. No, Indian, said Ravi. Forget it, said Mahesh. This I agreed with, and we played on, further inspired by the aroma of the cooking. Dinner was delicious, and we ate with joy. They also offered us to drink some cashew feni, a locally brewed spirit. It smelled like a cross between petrol and vomit, and while we both tried a sip, neither of us could cope with the taste. Another hour passed, and Ravi and Mahesh finished the feni and realized it was time to get back on their way. Graciously, they left us with the remainder of their vegetables, rice, and spices, and we thanked them with all our hearts. When they had gone, Shmeiki Baba took his knife and scratched a line on his walking stick. That's day 1, he said. Thank you, Great Mother, and please protect those drunk drivers and the people they share the road with. With that, we fell asleep, held by the earth. Friday, February the 10th, 2006. We awoke to the sweet, cool air and blue light of dawn. As the sun rose, We were enraptured by tweeting birds, monkey calls, and cows mooing. We were nestled among tree-covered hills, and in a state of deep appreciation, we sat taking it all in. I felt we had arrived in Eden. "And all this is just a day's walk from the tourist bubble," said Shmeiki Baba. We remembered with delight the supply of food left for us by Ravi and Mahesh, and Shmeiki Baba began to cook us some breakfast, while I wrote in my journal. "Here in nature I can be more real," said Shmeiki Baba, "without needing to worry about what other people think of me." "That is true," I said, "but there is something on my mind I need to tell you." "What's that?" asked Shmeiki Baba. It was difficult for me to say, but I could not hold it back. "I'm in love with Aida," I said. Shmeiki Baba smiled. "I know," he said. "Baba, it's totally okay." "What? She's your girlfriend. Are you not angry?" I asked. "We were only together for a few days. Of course, Aida is amazing, beautiful and sensitive. I love her, and I'm honored to know her, but I accept we are not a match. And even if we were, you would still be welcome to love her," said Shmeiki Baba. "Why are you not a match?" I asked. "I don't know," he said. "I guess I need someone kinkier." I did not understand what he meant by this, but I let it go, and soon after we began to walk along the side of State Highway 123, and the ground was still cool and wet with morning dew. The place where the thorn had been in my foot still hurt, and in truth, I was longing for some shoes. I stopped to look at the bottoms of my feet and saw that behind the dirt and sand there was ripped skin under my toes. "I hope they don't get infected," I said. "You'll be okay," Shmeiki Baba reassured me, and for a couple of minutes he offered Shmeiki healing to my feet. I felt some sort of energetic transfer, and I was pleasantly surprised when the pain actually went away, and I was able to walk with more ease. Luckily, our way was reasonably flat. That was until we reached the Kumbali Ghat mountain pass. From there, we had a tough climb, followed by a steep descent to the town of Sarantwadi. What made this more difficult was that parts of the road were made of gravel. On one steep, twisting section of road, we were shocked to witness a motorcyclist crash into a cow as he came round a bend too fast. We helped the man up and found that miraculously both he and the cow were unharmed. However, his motorbike was rather smashed up and not rideable. The man was terrified that someone might have seen the accident and would attack him because he had hit a holy cow. But luckily, other than us, there was no one else around. He hid his bike in the bushes at the side of the road and walked with us. He told us his name was Akash, and we talked about how risky riding a motorbike is. And as we did so, a family of 6 passed us, all riding on one bike. There were 2 small kids on the petrol tank in front of their father. The middle kid was behind him. Then came the mother, and finally the biggest kid was perched precariously on the back. If that wasn't enough, their dog was wrapped in a sheet and attached to the seat of the bike just above the exhaust pipe. "A hot dog," said Shmeiki Baba. "Different perceptions of risk," said Akash. We reached Sarantwadi, and as we walked through town, we passed shops selling all sorts of colourful wooden toys and models. Finally, we came to the picturesque Moti Talao Lake, where Akash lived, and he said goodbye. We took a rest next to a chai stand, and despite our tiredness, we got out our instruments, as we'd already understood that if we played, we were more likely to be offered food and drink. Soon, 2 Israeli travellers in their early 20s stopped next to us on their old green Enfield motorbike. They introduced themselves as Itamar and Talia. Itamar asked us the name of our band. "Make it until you fake it," said Shmeiki Baba. They were astonished to find out that we were walking across India barefoot. "How can you do that?" asked Talia. "Think of all the pathogenic bacteria, not to mention the viruses and fungi you'll come in contact with. At the very least, rub some antimicrobial tea tree oil on your feet." Actually, I've got some I can give you, she said. She opened her bag to look for it and gave a small bottle to Shmeiki Baba. He thanked her, rubbed some of the oil on his feet, and passed the bottle on to me, and I did the same. Somehow, Shmeiki Baba guessed that Talya's birthday was September the 16th. How did you know that? Asked Talya. I'm not sure, said Shmeiki Baba. It's no big deal, though. I can only guess Virgos. But how did you know that I'm a Virgo? She asked. I could just feel it, he answered. And what sign are you? She asked. I'm all the signs, said Shmeiki Baba. No, really, asked Talya. Truth is, I don't believe in horoscopes, answered Shmeiki Baba. In that moment of confusion, Shmeiki Baba began to dance, although there was no music. Itamar joined in and became very joyful, and we all danced without music, as did the chai stand owner. And Itamar said to Shmeiki Baba, I feel like a child again. Good, brother, answered Shmeiki Baba. We hugged each other and sat down and drank chai. Soon after, we said farewell and walked on through this rich and ancient land. Outside Sawantwadi, we were looking at the map, wondering which way to go, when a voice asked us an unsolicited question. What happened? Neither of us looked up from the map, but we answered together, Nothing happened. Something happened, said the voice. When we did look up, we saw a man dressed in saffron robes with a large turban on his head and the mystery of the world in his wolfish face. What, no chappals? He asked, pointing towards our bare feet. Many questions, Baba, said Shmeiki Baba. Yes, he said. And where are you headed to? To Pune, we answered. Jackass, he shouted. I asked him what this meant, and he said it meant fantastic in Marathi, the language of Maharashtra. Which route are you taking? He asked. Via Kudal, said Shmeiki Baba. Well, if you like, you can walk off-road from here through beautiful forests. After 3 days you will cross the river Gad and reach the village of Digvala, said the holy man. But we have no provisions, I said. Worry not, said the sadhu, and he pointed to the right side of the road about 100 meters ahead. Even within sight there is food. Just go over there and you will find wild jambalam berry and cashew nuts. Also there is papaya, so you will not go hungry. Be careful with cashew nuts, though. Do you know that you must not eat them raw, and you must not even touch them before you cook them? Thank you, I didn't know, said Shmeiki Baba, and then he asked, And how about water? There are plenty of streams, said the Baba. How rocky is the way? I asked. There are rocks, but you will be able to walk without shoes, he said. I must say, you do speak rather good English, said Shmeiki Baba. Oh yes, thank you, sir. Pardon me for not introducing myself. My name is Amitabh, and I am now a sadhu, but I used to be a C++ programmer in Bangalore, he said, with that particular headshake that isn't a yes and isn't a no. We introduced ourselves too, and we chatted a while longer until Amitabh said that he had to get going, and we said goodbye and walked over to the bushes. We began picking the dark purple jambalam berries. They had a sweet and sour taste, and when Shmeiki Baba began to eat them directly from the bush without using his hands, I did the same. It was a delight, and then we turned our attention to the cashews. They were ripe and ready for picking. Shmeiki Baba had not seen cashews on a tree before, and I showed him how they come in 3 parts. There is the big orange or yellow fruit called the cashew apple, which looks a bit like a bell pepper. Cashews are a rare case in nature of what is called a pseudo-fruit. They use a trick because the real nut of the cashew is not in the apple, it is hidden in the kidney-shaped stem. As Amitabh said, you have to be careful when you open them, I warned, because they contain an oil called urushiol, which irritates the skin and causes a rash like poison ivy, and that's why you have to cook the nuts at least a little before eating them. We should find a plastic bag to protect our hands. No need, said Shmeiki Baba, and he took a green stem and opened it. I winced as he took out the nut. Doesn't it hurt? I asked him. He looked at his hands, at the sky, and gave a confident smile. There was no sign of redness on his hands, and he showed no sign of pain. Pride shone across his face, and a rush of anger overcame me. Are you performing miracles, Baba? Save your energy. I already know you're special, I said. Yes, brother, you're right, he answered, and then he said, Uh-oh, and he held out his hands once again, and we watched as a rash began to appear all over them. Quick, scrub them before it's too late, I said, taking a cloth from my bag. I poured water on it and gave it to Shmeiki Baba to use to scrub his hands with. I told him to rub each and every part of his hands vigorously, while I continued to pour water over them. Amazingly, the rash disappeared. That is the miracle, I said. Shmeiki Baba breathed a sigh of relief, and we carefully picked more cashews and put them in my bag, intending to open and cook them later. I chopped one cashew apple open with my knife. This part has no urushiol oil, I said. The fruit was sweet, but it also had a tannin taste which dried the mouth. You know, cashews were brought to Goa by the Portuguese, I said. How kind of them, he answered. And we turned onto the forest footpath and used my compass to check our direction. In comparison with the asphalt, it was a pleasure to walk on the dirt track. I commented that I felt better connected to the ground, and Shmeiki Baba agreed. In a state of presence, while walking barefoot, you feel the sensations of the earth under your feet, and you automatically alter your speed according to the changes in the terrain. When you step on something sharp, you tend to lift your foot in time, and if you do get a thorn in your foot, you can usually take it out quite easily. Caught in thought, however, thorns tend to go in further and get stuck. A breeze began to blow through the trees and brought us relief, and it made the dust we kicked up with our steps cool and soothing. I scanned the sensations in my body as I walked, and I felt joyous. When Shmeiki Baba stopped, I did the same. Closing my eyes, I saw magnificent geometrical patterns. I told this to Shmeiki Baba. Me too, he said. These are manifestations of the great algorithm. By sunset, we had walked the best part of 30 kilometers, and we made camp at the edge of a clearing. I remembered I had some condoms in my bag, so I put one on each hand so I could get the cashew nuts out of their stems without the urushiol oil touching my hands. I proceeded to wash the nuts and fried them with salt. There were not so many of them, but we ate them with the berries and they were really tasty. I noted to Shmeiki Baba that we had used up a lot of our water and we didn't have much left. We will find more tomorrow, he said. Afterwards, we lay on the ground looking up at the Milky Way and marveled that our whole universe apparently exists in a school computer within another universe. Saturday, February the 11th, 2006. We woke at dawn and began to walk soon after. The whole time we were listening out for the sound of flowing water. By mid-morning, our remaining water supply was almost finished, and we were becoming increasingly worried. Bloody Amitabh, said Shmeiki Baba. Why bloody Amitabh? I asked. He told us there were lots of streams. Clearly there aren't, and we might die of thirst. Why didn't we bring more water bottles? Seethed Shmeiki Baba. Relax, Baba, I said. Beating ourselves up about it won't help. We knew we just had to keep on going, even though there was no sound or sight of water, only trees, land and rocks. And when we shared the very last of our supply, we saw the fear in each other's eyes. Thirst began with a dry throat and spread from there until it reached every cell in my body. I was truly beginning to contemplate my death when finally we heard the faintest sound of a river in the distance. Hear that? Shouted Shmeiki Baba. Yes, yes, I shouted. We ran in the direction of the sound, over fallen trees and around bushes, until finally we found it, a fast-flowing river. We filled our bottles and I put water purification tablets in them. Usually, I can't stand the taste of water which has been purified with tablets. But given our thirst, it tasted like nectar. When we were satisfied, we made a fire and boiled more water. While we were waiting, Shmeiki Baba noticed there was wild sage growing next to the river. We picked some and made sage tea with it. Meanwhile, we realized there was also a wild papaya plant full of papayas and 2 perfectly ripe fruit, undamaged by insects or birds, were lying on the ground. We cut them open and sunk our faces into the sweet flesh. Then we sat bathing in the river, drinking our sage tea, while we waited for more pans of water to boil and cool, so we could fill all of our water bottles. Before we left this blessed spot, we took some less ripe papayas with us so that we would not go hungry the next day. On we walked, and in the late afternoon we passed 2 bright-eyed shepherds with their flocks of about 20 goats. Undimmed by modern life, their faces glowed, and we shared some moments with them in complete silence before moving on with the merest but sincerest of nods. Monday, February the 13th, 2006. In the morning, Shmeiki Baba said to me, "You know, tonight is the snow moon." I made the obvious comment that it was a bit hot for snow, and then the impossible became possible, as we became enveloped in an enormous flutter of white butterflies, and we were hypnotized by their elegant motion as though caught in a hot blizzard. We covered another grueling 30 kilometers and reached the village of Digvala in the evening after crossing the river Gad by a footbridge. The temple was the first thing we saw. After 3 days in pure nature, the colorful flashing lights outside the temple seemed so bright we could barely look at them. As we approached the Ganta, the temple bell rang, signifying it was time for puja. Shmeiki Baba entered the temple and I followed. The colorful building was lit with candles, and in the center was a fireplace. We were met with astonished looks from the 10 or so local people standing there. I guessed that some of them might never have seen a foreigner before, but the priest welcomed us warmly, and he talked in Hindi, assuming we would understand better than if he spoke in Marathi. I thanked him, and he ushered us to stand with the rest of the congregation. The priest was happy we had visited his temple, and after puja he insisted he take us home with him. We gladly accepted his offer, and his wife fed us a rich, totally delicious chana masala, chickpeas cooked in a spicy sauce, served with jeera rice. Each bite brought rapture to our hungry mouths, and afterwards we played music in gratitude for the hospitality. Finally, the priest gave us mattresses, and we made our beds on his porch, where we fell asleep bathed in moonlight. Tuesday, February the 14th, 2006. We woke early to find we had both fallen prey to a case of diarrhea. This could only have been from the food we were fed the evening before. Shmeiki Baba got angry and said that it was bad enough having hemorrhoids without having a case of the runs as well. He said that his bottom hurt so much that he wanted to take revenge by shitting in the hair of the priest's wife. When the priest came outside and understood we were both ill, he gave us bale fruit extract to calm our stomachs. Shmeiki Baba thanked the priest without mentioning that he blamed his wife for making us sick. When the priest left us, I said to Shmeiki Baba, "You talk about being authentic, but you were two-faced with the priest just now." "Leave me alone, I feel like shit," he said. "You smell like it too," I answered. Luckily, the bale fruit extract was surprisingly effective, and by afternoon we both felt well enough to continue our journey at a gentle pace. We said our goodbyes and walked down Naradave Road for about 6 kilometers until we reached the little village of Kanedi. There we met Vijay, the owner of a grocery store. His children called us Uncle and Uncle, and they asked us to join them climbing the acacia tree next to their house. We did so, to their amusement, and later Vijay fed us rice and plain boiled vegetables because of our upset stomachs, and we slept the night peacefully under the tree. Thursday, February the 16th, 2006. After taking a rest day in Kanadi, we continued north for 16 kilometers until we reached the village of Pondagat. There we met Vishnu, a seller of amla juice. Vishnu explained that amla fruit is most high in vitamin C and can heal diseases of heart, lung, brain, stomach, and liver. He offered to sell us some, and when we explained that we did not have money, he insisted we drink a glass on his account. The juice was incredibly tart, but left our tongues pleasantly zinging. We thanked Vishnu, and before we left, he said, "Do one more thing. While you are in our locality, stop at Napne waterfalls. They will wash your soul." We promised to look out for them and continued north, passing through dense forests, screaming with life. We noted that we were already considerably stronger than when we had left Arambol, and we decided to walk a further 18 kilometers as far as the village of Vaibhavvadi. When we finally arrived there, we rested close to a field where some men were playing cricket. Shmeiki Baba said that there was something reassuring to him about the sound of a game of cricket. While we were there, a Scandinavian-looking man walked past us, and as we had not seen another foreigner in a good number of days, we greeted him warmly. We were surprised when his response was standoffish, and as he was noticeably disappointed by our presence, neither of us prolonged the interaction. Shmeiki Baba commented that some foreigners are seeking an exclusively Indian movie to lose themselves in, so much so that they can get quite annoyed if you get in their shot. Friday, February the 17th, 2006. Remembering Vishnu's advice to visit the waterfalls, we set out to reach them. On the way, we came to a place where the road forked. The path was not marked on our map, so Shmeiki Baba stopped a farmer. "Hello, sir, is the waterfall this way or this way?" he asked, pointing in each direction. The farmer was expressionless and pointed us to his left. We walked in that direction for the best part of an hour, but did not find the waterfalls. Finally, Shmeiki Baba said, "I think he sent us the wrong way." "Maybe he didn't understand you," I said. "Then why couldn't he just say so?" asked Shmeiki Baba. "People often do not say when they don't understand. That's why you have to ask questions carefully, like, 'You know waterfall?' Pointing and offering suggestions is a bad idea," I explained. "I'll remember that for next time," said Shmeiki Baba. We walked back in the direction we had come, over the footprints we had left in the dust, and when we reached the farmer this time, Shmeiki Baba said to him only one word, "Waterfall," and waited. Slowly, the farmer pointed us to the right. This second path was the only other option, so it had to be correct, and it was, and we were rewarded for our perseverance. The falls were not high, but they were broad and powerful, and we left our belongings on the riverbank, jumped into the river, and waded over to the cascade. There we allowed vast amounts of water to pummel our bodies and purify our souls, just as Vishnu had suggested. "Great Mother, help me clear my blockages so I can flow without limits," said Shmeiki Baba. "Om Shmeiki," I said. Finally, we got out of the water and dried ourselves, and I looked at Shmeiki Baba, and it occurred to me to say to him, "You might think you are fire, but really you are water." "Yes," he said. We proceeded north on footpaths. In the afternoon, we came across an enormous wild gaur, an Indian bison. She was standing in the middle of the footpath, raking the ground with her foot. We backed up and waited for her to move, but she was not in any rush, which is why it took us until evening to reach State Highway 114. There, We found a field of spinach and looked for the owner to ask if we could have some, but we couldn't find anyone. We hesitated until, motivated by hunger, Shmeiki Baba cut a number of bunches and hurriedly put them in his bag. We walked on about half a kilometer before making camp by the side of the road and sautéing the spinach. The taste of our crime was delicious, but soon Shmeiki Baba said that we should not have taken what was not ours. Now is not a time for a crisis of conscience, I said. I have let myself down, he said. He turned away from me and vomited. Then he clutched his backside and groaned in desperation. Oh God, here we go again. Sheila 5. And Sheila began to speak through Shmeiki Baba. Punishing yourself at a time like this is a foolish act of self-sabotage. You made yourself sick just now so that you would not benefit from eating the spinach. But this is less about your guilt for stealing and more about the bag of shame you are still dragging behind you. I see that sending you on a pilgrimage and advising you to release unhelpful beliefs about yourself is not enough, because you have great resistance to change when it comes to healing emotional wounds. For this reason, as we proceed, I'm going to give you some exercises to help you with your process. I'd like you to start with the first one straight away. As anger is the easiest repressed emotion to reconnect with, I want you to begin by standing up and taking a deep breath. Then, I want you to imagine someone you are angry with, maybe your father or someone else who has hurt you, and I want you to scream and curse them until you can scream and curse no more. Sheila became quiet. Shmeiki Baba opened his eyes, stood up, and began to do as she had requested. He stamped his feet, beat his chest, lay back down on the ground and rolled in the dust, hissing and cursing. He looked like he was possessed by a demon. Somehow, it gave me the urge to follow suit. I did so, and we both yelled our lungs out across the fields. We also turned on each other and released the frustration which had been building between us. You filthy Nazi bastard, shouted Shmeiki Baba. You fat little yid, I screamed. We even pushed and spat at each other. Finally, we were worn out, and Shmeiki Baba said, Now let us lie still and feel the blood flowing through our veins. I did as he suggested, and I could feel the blood coursing around my body. Soon we were calm and our anger was gone. We hugged, and Shmeiki Baba went and got some more spinach.